Apple's upcoming iPhone 17e just got a fresh wave of leaks thanks to a new report out of Korea, and on the surface it sounds straightforward. Slimmer bezels, same old iPhone 14 based OLED display, which immediately makes you think, oh, the notch is back. But now on a diet, a sort of fitness journey notch. But here's where things get interesting and a little bit confusing, because what this rumor really seems to be implying is something slightly different. The alert is saying Apple's sticking with the iPhone 14 base panel, but a 6.1 inch panel with slimmer bezels is already used in the iPhone 15 and iPhone 16. So when you look closely, what this report is probably suggesting is that the iPhone 17 is going to adopt the same panel Apple's already mass producing for the current iPhone 16. And yes, that means it won't go anywhere near the ultra-thin bezels of the iPhone 17 series. That tier separation is staying firmly intact. What's also notable is what the leak doesn't mention. There's zero reference to the dynamic island, and iPhone 14 based OLEDs definitely reads like the notch is sticking around for another year, which would make the 17e look even more archaic. But honestly, I don't buy that. With Apple still producing iPhone 16 units, using the same panel for the 17e would be the simplest, cheapest, and most Apple-like solution. And that panel has the dynamic island, so my money is on the 17e looking basically identical to the iPhone 15 and 16 from the front. Dynamic island, modern layout, slightly thicker bezels than the iPhone 17 models, and a panel that slots neatly into Apple's cost-cutting strategy without looking outdated. And yes, this new report also confirms the 17e is going to stay at 60Hz, completely expected. Apple loves a good nudge, and nothing nudges people up the product ladder like a refresh rate that politely tells you, wouldn't you prefer the real iPhone 17? And that neatly brings us to the bigger picture, because with the 17e, Apple's about to take another swing at cracking the budget iPhone formula after not doing so well with the 16e. And the 17e is rumored to launch this spring around March or April, alongside other early year budget devices like the new A18 MacBook and the base iPad, according to leaker Jeff Pugh. But let's put the other devices aside for now, they're just background noise in this story. Today is all about the iPhone 17e, Apple's second generation E-series iPhone. The first attempt, the 16e, had potential but stumbled with its pricing and positioning, leaving many to shrug and stick with the SE or step up to the regular iPhone 16. The 17e, however, looks like Apple's finally taking the budget segment seriously, or at least Apple seriously, which is its own unique style of seriousness. What's interesting right from the start is how different the second generation attempt looks on paper. Pugh claims the 17e is getting the new A19 chipset, a major front camera upgrade, a proper design refresh, and yet somehow he also says it's sticking with Apple's first generation C1 modem. That caught me off guard because Apple has been gradually moving to full control over its silicon stack, and upgrading modems annually seems like a natural progression. But more on that in a moment. The big question with the 17e is simple. Can it turn around what the 16e started but couldn't finish? Looking at the context, the 16e hasn't exactly been a smash hit. Fixed Focus Digital points out that hasn't been a huge success, and that in Europe, the 16e reached 9th place in the top selling smartphone list with roughly 8% of Apple's shipments. Compare that to the 2022 SE, which had 6th place, or the SE 2020, which reached 3rd. So while the 16e made some noise, it didn't capture hearts or sales charts the way the SE once did. The main culprit? Price. In Europe, the 16e launched at €699, which immediately placed it out of budget territory. Apple effectively replaced the SE with something more modern, yes, but also considerably more expensive. $160 more to be exact. So what changes are Apple bringing to the iPhone 17e to make it a better offering? To begin with, it will finally ditch the notch in favor of the dynamic island. This is a change long overdue. The notch has been lingering on iPhones longer than some Apple executives' tenure. The dynamic island instantly makes the 17e feel more like a proper modern iPhone, rather than an afterthought shoehorned into the budget category. Digital Chat Station also points to the same change, and when two independent sources align, it's usually a strong indicator the design is set. The display will stick at 60Hz, which does sting a little in 2026, but this is Apple. They're not going to give us 120Hz panels to iPhones. They plan to price at $599. It's OLED, bright enough, and at 6.1 inches, it provides the same manageable form factor that keeps most people happy. The brightness is also set to match the iPhone 15's 2000 nit outdoor peak, a significant step up from the iPhone 16e, which could feel a little dim compared to the rest of the modern iPhone series. Slimmer bezels give it a cleaner, more contemporary look, and in hand, it will feel more refined, even if the overall design language remains familiar. For the spec sheet nerds out there, the 17e will get the A19 chipset, which is a very nice upgrade. Apple could have played it safe with older silicon, but giving the 17e the same chipset as a standard iPhone 17 guarantees a longer lifespan and better performance for years to come. Efficiency improvements should also enhance battery life, which was already excellent on the 16e. Combined with the new front camera and brighter screen, the 17e feels like a modern capable iPhone rather than just a budget compromise. Speaking of the front camera, this is one of the upgrades I'm personally excited about. The 17e reportedly is getting the same 18 megapixel center stage camera from the standard iPhone 17. For those who don't know, this allows landscape selfies even when holding the phone in portrait orientation. Oh my god! It's a small tweak, but one that surprisingly makes a big difference in daily usage. Apple seems to finally understand that people actually take selfies in landscape sometimes. Shocking, I know. Bringing this feature to the cheaper model is a real quality of life upgrade that makes the 17e feel surprisingly modern. The rear camera remains a single 48 megapixel sensor, no ultra-wide or telephoto lenses, but Apple's computational photography has improved so much that one strong sensor often outperforms mid-range Android phones that cram 3 lenses into a package for marketing purposes. The main lens benefits from better processing, and for the core audience, this will feel more than adequate. Color options are a different story. The iPhone 17 is expected to come in black and white only, safe, neutral, functional. I wish Apple had offered at least one extra color, maybe blue or orange, but historically Apple uses colors as a way to nudge people towards the higher end models. Quick pause, but if you're enjoying this content, I would appreciate a sub and also tapping the hype button. This pushes the video out to more Apple fans like you and helps me produce this content on a regular basis. Thank you in advance. Now back to the modem. This is the part I'm most curious about. Pooh claims the 17e is going to retain the C1 modem, which is a little puzzling. Apple has invested heavily in its in-house modems, and historically, when they introduce a new component, it receives yearly refinements early on. The C1 was solid, but the expectation was for Apple to move to a new generation, possibly the C2, especially in a phone shipping in 2026. Heck, the iPhone Air got the C1X. That's how fast Apple's already progressing with their modem updates, and so sticking with the C1 isn't a disaster, but it does feel cautious and perhaps a little conservative. We'll see how this pans out in reality, but I'd wager Apple's gonna sneak in a new modem. One of the more compelling aspects of the 17e outside of the chip and front camera is its display and design refinements. Rounded edges similar to the iPhone 15 finally replaced the slightly harsh slab edges of the 14 series, making the phone more comfortable to hold for extended periods. These small changes, combined with slimmer bezels and improved brightness, make this phone feel premium, even without adding higher end features. Charging remains standard, likely no MagSafe for the 17e, only wide USB-C and likely basic Qi wireless charging. I also don't think the higher wired charging speeds are going to come to the 17e because Apple wants you to buy the iPhone 17, and Apple keeps the MagSafe experience as a differentiator of higher end models, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. Pricing is where the 17e is really interesting. Expected to land at $599 in the US and likely £599 here in the UK, Apple's probably going to drop the 16e to $499/pounds when the 17e launches. Ironically, the 17e's most meaningful impact may be making the 16e more desirable. Suddenly, the phone below it hits a sweet spot, and Apple's pricing ladder feels more logical. The 17e at $599 solid, but not groundbreaking, and $499 would be far too generous. Apple doesn't break its pricing ladder that aggressively. Storage is another consideration. I've seen some speculate that we could see 256 gigs of base storage. While tempting, I have my doubts. Apple maintains strict product segmentation, and the 128 gig iPhone 16 sits above it in the range. It's unlikely Apple would undercut the tier above, so 128 gigs will probably remain the baseline for the 17e. And so yeah, overall guys, I think the refinements with the 17e are pretty nice, but I remain skeptical about whether this is enough to revive the E series completely. Actually, if anything, as I said, the 16E at $499 is going to be way more exciting and is going to be way more competitive in some respects. The 17E is safer, cleaner, and slightly more polished, but it's not widely exciting at $599. Apple has upgraded enough to make it desirable, but it hasn't transformed it as a must-have device. It's kind of thing that makes you nod and say, yeah, that makes sense, rather than rushing out to buy it immediately. Still, the 17E is significant. It shows Apple isn't abandoning the budget segment. It fixes nearly every pain point from the 16E: brighter screen, improved front camera, more comfortable design, longer support with the A19 chipset, and a modern aesthetic with the dynamic island. It doesn't reinvent the budget iPhone, but it does refine it to a point where it feels like a phone you'd be happy to keep for several years. So what do you think? Will the 17E be enough to save the E-series, or are you still waiting for Apple to fully commit to creating a compelling entry-level iPhone? Personally, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's not the breakout moment we wanted, but it's a refinement that makes sense. Apple has made it brighter, snappier, and more comfortable, and for buyers looking for a modern iPhone under $600, it delivers a solid package. If you've been enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe and hit the hype button. It really helps a small channel like mine keep bringing you Apple leaks, iPhone speculation, and just the right amount of commentary on colours nobody asked for.